Going to multiple locations at once. Here we go. Guess I don't need to clap to start these episodes, do I? We don't
No,
have
I
them being
just
recorded, so we
that's
just do it
funny.
anyways. Here we are. Welcome to another episode of the Jim Gale Show. We're live again. This is Sunday morning. Extremely excited to be here. We've got my good friend and partner, Jim Gale. How you doing this morning, buddy?
Matthew, I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited about this show today and about everything that's going on right now. Yesterday, we had about 50 people from the Florida Freedom Keepers come take a tour around Galt's Landing. And it was profound because the message is just, it's spreading exponentially. It's such a simple and logical message. So I'm just so thankful. And Doc Pete Chambers, oh my gosh. I am so glad that we are connected. The things that you've done for our world and for our freedom, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Jim, it's just an honor to be here. I'm just happy to be alive right now. And this time, I'm 39 years in uniform, active in guard and reserves. I was looking in the world this way right here, this little tunnel, right, and that's all I did. And I took the uniform off last May last year, and was able to operate a lot more freely with guys like you. So appreciate it.
Oh man, it's just so beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your history of service and of course your intention and then how you've come to think differently.
Yeah, I'll give you the real short version because 39 years could take a while. But 1983 under Ronald Reagan, I came in. I was 18. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Just thought, my dad was military, World War II type, and I was an infantryman. I was a paratrooper. I was a Green Beret. Got out, came back, went into college, became a doctor. 9/11 happened, put me back on the front again with the Green Berets as their doctor, and then. And I always say, during the 80s and 90s, nothing was really going on. So I've been wounded and blown up more times as a doctor than I ever was as a trigger puller. But that's just the way it is. But I've always been involved with some highly motivated, highly dedicated Americans who want to do the right thing. Special Forces, our motto is "De oppresso liber," which is to free the oppressed. We believe in it. We believe in that. It's not a mantra. It's just a way of life. And what I saw happen over time as I've gotten higher in rank and higher in knowledge of what's going on behind the curtain of craziness, is that sometimes we get used for certain things, and it could be disheartening. It could cause depression and all these things some of these guys go through and gals. But when you are led by a different spirit, you honestly see things and you're enlightened and not woke. And that's where we're at. That's my life in a nutshell. And it brought me to this fight right now, which has been the medical freedom fight. And for me, as a whistleblower to Senator Ron Johnson back last year and said, hey, look what's happening to our troops. And yeah, I mean, he did a great job, but unfortunately, the Department of Defense didn't want to answer the questions. So I just went about it differently and started getting on shows and talking about it. And here we are.
Here we are. We're affecting and inspiring and empowering the movable middle, as some of my friends like to say. It's those people that know something's wrong, but they don't know what it is. And when they hear from somebody with your credentials, it affects them differently. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's so important that you and people like you who have these credentials that come out and talk about it. So it's beautiful, buddy.
We were just talking about that before the show, and I want people to understand what we were talking about, because you even said we should have this on the show. So it's in unconventional warfare, which is my specialty. That means like 12 guys like me, 12 dudes go downrange in the middle of nowhere where nobody wants to be. People are trying to kill each other over whatever dumb reason, and we've got to convince them that there's a better way. Well, we got to do it in foreign languages with sometimes bullets flying or whatever, people wanting to blow us up in our trucks. And we got to convince that middle, right? Those common sense people. Because the one thing I learned around the world, and you've been in a lot of places too, is people just want joy. They want to see their kids grow up. They want to be healthy. They want to experience nature. They want to experience life. And so it was my job on the medical side specifically to win those hearts and minds. But it's not just about winning the hearts and minds. It's about those are human beings that want that. And we have to do that. So if we can do it in an austere environment like that, in those languages, which my languages are Farsi, Dari, and Greek, and all those. So We can do it in English a lot easier, right? And we can do it in all the languages of the world through different interpreters, but we can get that message out that there is hope and you can have joy and you don't have to be stuck in this left or right mentality, because nobody defines me. I define me. My God defines me, personally. That's number one. And then my family down to me, essentially. Yeah, we're hitting all cylinders here.
Man. Now, what do you think about the left and right mentality? Because some people are still thinking about this situation from that perspective.
Yeah, so when you polarize things, that goes back to the time of Plato and Aristotle, both students of Socrates. And that's called a dialectic. So you have the left and the right. And as long as we oppose people, or as long as we create these races or these strata of economic, we have division, and people play on that. Bad guys play on that. I mean, I hate to say it, I had to play on that too downrange with certain, really dangerous environments. But when we allow that to happen, then there's some other person that's kind of like holding the strings, and they're saying, this is the synthesis. This is the thing that I want to happen. And so they use this dialectic. Some people call it Hegelian dialectic to oppose us, to make us fight each other. Antifa, BLM, this, that. We're angry. We're going to, riot. You see, they're playing you for a fool. And we don't want to do that. So we want to operate in peace and joy and happiness and all the things that a warrior monk like me believes in and lives in. And we don't fight because we hate. We fight because we love. Truest virtue of a warrior.
Yeah. And that's same as divide and conquer, correct?
Divide and conquer. Absolutely. When they divide us, divided we fall. Abraham Lincoln put it best, in his speeches, and in many speeches, and paraphrasing, divided we fall, united we stand.
And we have the most divided culture we've had for a long, long time right now. And I see this, it's so strategically played. You've got these two political entities, right? And one side gets a certain message, and the message is that the other side is going to kill us. And the other side gets the exact same message, but from the polar opposite perspective, that the other side is the cause of our world falling apart and so on. It's just incredibly well played, and we've got to ignore both of those sides of messages and go back to what you said. I believe joy, community, love, freedom, service.
Yeah, back in the day, when I grew up during the Vietnam era as a little kid, my uncle was in Vietnam and stuff, and people came home and there was the hippie movement, and they got a hold of me in my head as a cowboy and saying, well, those hippies are crazy, talking about peace and love and joy. What's all that about? We got to go conquer the world. And there is time for righteous anger. There is time for that. I live 280 miles from the border where I've seen human trafficking. And I was down there for the last 2 years fighting that stuff and fentanyl and all those things coming across. There is time for righteous anger, but it is not when we're being used in a dialectic that is causing us to be angry against each other. And this is my litmus test for that. If somebody tells you something and it causes you to have some kind of emotion, think twice, measure twice, and cut once. Make sure that that this emotion that just created in you is something that is worthy of righteous anger. If it's not, then cleave that thing, because you're gonna get played, and that's where they'll come in and crush you.
You bring up the Vietnam War and the hippie movement, and there's a phenomenal book that I went through that always brings me back to that area. It's Chaos, Charlie Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. This gentleman who wrote this book, Tom O'Neill, he investigated that for over 20 years, the Charlie Manson murders, and discovered all of the CIA involvement in Haight-Ashbury and how they got a lot of the hippies into utilizing the LSD and other drugs, how Charlie had a handler basically throughout that whole thing. And obviously what that series of events did for that movement is it painted that group of people, instead of being peace, love, happiness, it was crazy, right, murderous negativity, which really squashed that whole movement.
Right. And that's the same thing. So now the handlers are, in that case, the CIA. And, there's some good people in there. I've worked side by side with them, but at the lower levels. At the upper levels, I can't answer for them. They've got to answer for themselves. But when they're playing people like that, that's bad juju. Step back from that and cleave that thing like a bad vine.
Right. And let's talk about the levels. So I like to go to the highest level and then figure out what the heck is going on at the highest level, because then once we figure out that, then it's kind of like all the other things kind of fall in line.
Right.
What
Right.
in the heck is going on in the world right now?
So we call that the 40,000 foot view, right? For a guy that jumps out of a plane at high levels, that's your 40,000 foot view, and you want to come down from there. So what I did was we called it intelligence preparation of the battlefield or battle space. And if this is truly a 5th generation warfare we're in, which is a whole science unto itself, it's not so simple. But if it is that, we have to look at it from evil and not evil is at the top. All right, period. Black and white. It's that easy. So not evil wants joy, peace, and love. Evil wants death, period. Who that person is, we could say Satan, we could say God, but truly, there to me, it's like a DNA flaw, and that DNA creates a cancer, and that cancer continues to move and move and move. So as we get down to the different levels, the different strata, if you will, in my opinion, Pete Chambers, my operation Assured Ascension, I called it when I got out of the military, said my next operation's for the Army of God, and this is my operation, Assured Ascension, is we're going to move, we're going to ascend above all this. And when I did the IPB on that, intelligence preparation of the battlefield, for that particular piece, I came up with 2 pyramids. All right. Now I'm not going with the, Freemason pyramid or nothing like that. I'm just using pyramids as strata coming down. The higher you get to the top, the less that are running the operation. So on the black side, some people say black hats and white hats. Look, I got a black hat on. I do white hat stuff, right? Right. So, but on that pyramid, as we come down, we're looking at bureaucratic, industrialists, money-driven folks who have the love of mammon in their heart. The love, just mammon, money, right? And then you have control over people, because some people are just control freaks, right? And I'm keeping this pretty simple. We can get real deep, but we don't have the time nor the wherewithal to do that. And then as it comes down to the next strata, and there's several different levels, and I identified them, then we look at the media that they used in order to, that's their information operation campaign. So it's typically bigger media, even though we might have a CNN and we might have a Fox out there and people think that's left and right. No, that's the dialectic that I'm talking about. Fox News puts out news, CNN puts out news, but they control masses by that emotion. The emotion is what controls the masses. Yeah. That is just key. I do that in information operations at a lower level, at a tactical level, downrange. I might go to another village, not tell a lie, but push a truth that elicits emotion. So that's there. On our side of the thing, me being a white hat, wearing a black hat, on our side of the thing, it's you've got people that are enlightened, that are all about freeing people, de oppresso liber, free the oppressed. And we move down that, and those people typically have a good DNA structure who are all about those things, a mother's love for a child, that kind of stuff. And then we move down into now what has become the strata of media, which is us right now talking on this, all the 29 other shows that I've talked on, which I never wanted to do in the first place. But when Senator Johnson said my name on C-SPAN, I was no longer a shadow warrior. I had to talk about it. Here I am. I'm out of the plane. I got to land the chute. So now we are going to the next level down. And the next level down is the worker bees. Now, here's the funny part. The worker bees on the black side, on the just the dark side, they look down, the ones at the top of that pyramid, they look down at those people down there as useful idiots. All right. It's a Marxist type of thing. Useful idiots. They're going to do this because we're going to get them to go crash every window in Chicago and see. And then we're going to justify it by using the upper level, that media right above it, to string that. And the ones right above them who are paying the media to put their ads and do all this stuff. I don't know, BlackRock, Vanguard. I don't know if those are things that are really on the black side, but perhaps they could be. I haven't done the IPB on that specifically. That's not my world. But if they're controlling that string, that's how it makes it down to the tactical level, where useful idiots for them. For us, we just call them people, right? We just call them people. They're humanity. And I look down and I think, I spoke with Del Bigtree the other day at the, 20 miles from here at the Texas Capitol. And he did, he batted cleanup on that, did a great job. My little piece was about 5 minutes. And all I was there to do was to instill some Texas pride in these folks. And I did, got them going. Yeah, Alamo. So, but we were telling truths. And so that was us getting to the tactical level to talk to people that are carrying signs and going, don't go out there and operate in hate. Go out there and operate in joy and peace and love. And I looked around the crowd and I said, see those little kids out there pointing down at the stage? I said, that's why we're doing this, because I'm 58 years old. I'm not going to be here forever. I want my grandson, who lives up in Minnesota, a place you might know about, and he's up there in Minnesota, a little guy, not even a year old yet, and I want him and his kids to have this, because my ceiling is their floor.
Yeah. Oh man, that's what, with Matthew's family, my family, that's our primary motivation in life, is the kids and the future, and helping to bring about that future of abundance. And that's what I love about this whole thing, is it's so embarrassingly, actually, I like to change that word, joyfully simple to live in abundance. It's just, that's been the programming for so many years, that they program scarcity into our mindsets, because you can control scarcity. You cannot control abundance.
That's it.
It seems to me we have the one side of the top of that pyramid with the controllers. It's like the oligarchs, right? The very powerful, wealthy people who have then infiltrated the WEF and the UN, and they utilize those things as their control mechanisms to infiltrate the governments around the world. And from there, once they have the control of the government, they're able to pass all kinds of things which are not in the people's best interest. It's in the interest of the oligarchs.
That's absolutely right. And when you're printing money and it's that easy to get, and it's a fiat currency, it doesn't really mean anything, but it does, because it allows them to operate their machine. That's a tough one to go up against, right? It's tough for me, because I'm a guy that's like left the military and drive around the country, and people are like, let me help you with some gas there, doc. But it ain't about that. We're not promised comfort, right? I've lived very poor, I've lived very affluent. It's not about that. I enjoy the trenches better. It's more fun. But I want other people to have their comfort, their definition of that. It's not about affluence. It's about what you need and how you continue to sustain it. Even though I don't believe in a lot of what, like the people with the panda on their organization, I've seen the bad stuff they do. They've done down in the Amazon. I've been down there, and it's those terms can be taken. They can be bastardized if we're not careful.
Yeah. Real quick question for you. Matthew brought up the WEF and these organizations being infiltrated. It is my understanding that these organizations were actually created from their inception to be control mechanisms. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I didn't mean they were infiltrated. I meant that they infiltrate the governments.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that they were created maybe in the day one. Most people thought they were going to be something different than they are today, but I think very quickly they were converted into their true intention.
Yeah, I'll agree with you, Matthew. It's speaking about, let's just say, the WEF and then their connections with World Wildlife Federation. Great people, right? Just like me on the ground. I mean, I consider myself a good person down there doing the job that I got to do. But for the past 20 years, when you pull everything out of Afghanistan in 2 weeks, it makes me wonder, what did I do for 20 years, right? Was I doing bidding of what I believe was right? I don't know. So I believe that the people that started those things, and they're working on the ground, and they really have a good heart, and they're out there trying to save the pandas in the trees, they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
But sometimes they get used as either useful idiots, or people just don't know, and they're not idiots. I mean, that's just how their bosses look at them.
Exactly.
So that's what I see, and I've seen it over and over again. USAID, I've seen those people destroy communities. That's straight out of the State Department.
You see
on the ground, the bosses.
Yeah, and you see it so much in the medical field. Like all these phenomenal people who became pediatricians or doctors because they truly care and want to save lives and help. But their system is so stacked against them, all the knowledge they gather throughout their learning career, and then the associations that regulate what they do. They've built this beautiful box of separation where they've lost their humanity, but they have a purpose around health, right? And because of that, they can't see the things that are out there. They don't have a chance to even see it, right? They've got the horse blinders are put on them, and all they can see is what's directly in front of them.
Yeah, so that's a great non-inside the medical world view, because that's probably most people's view that are enlightened like you, Matthew. But here's what I also want to tell you about a couple minutes of medical freedom is that from the inside, as a doctor who's been through medical school, I was an osteopathic physician. That's where I went through. My dad was an old school DO that roam the countryside with a black bag and trade it for preserves. But this is what, when you get to medical school, you think, okay, I'm going to save the world. I really care. I do. I've done all this research, and I've gone and done all these volunteer things, and you do. But over time, the petrochemical companies that come in, the big pharma comes in for 4 years, and every system that you're learning, and while you're doing rotations and all this stuff, you're at hospitals, internships, residency, you keep getting detailed by these folks about, this is the drug you got to use for that. So now we're looking at treating symptoms and not treating the real problems, right? Because God created this machine that we have with this beautiful structure called deoxyribonucleic acid, or ribonucleic acid, RNA, DNA. This helix is just amazing structure that it's just perfection. And we've added things to it to mess up the tree, essentially, right? Now the adenosine cytosine doesn't link up right, and it's, the genomic structure is screwed. No. We're going to do things to allow the body to heal itself, because that is the main line of effort in this battle. And all these other things are adjunct, just like the red laser stuff I'm looking at, and the nutraceuticals and the non-GMO foods. If you feed yourself right, you don't need any of that stuff.
Oh, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, when we first started talking, you said, I recognize this flag. Tell me because you've went down this path, and I'd love to hear from your perspective about this.
Yeah. So when you look at the Constitution of the United States, and I'm not a constitutional attorney or anything like that, but I've fought for that thing for a long time against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That flag with stripes going, red and white, those mean that's like blood, right? That's the way I look at it. And when I put a flag on a coffin on an American that I send home, there's a little different meaning to me about that flag, not particularly that one, but the U.S. flag. But that one there represents a different thing. And I can't speak for exactly why that flag was made that way, but I can say that it's about sovereignty. It's about human sovereignty, but that was inalienable rights. This is to have happiness, joy, peace. Those same things. And in that Constitution, it was 1787 that when it was ratified, the Constitution, the states got together. The states, all right, they were colonies and they were states because they fought and they won. And then the states said, all right, we're going to create a federal government to kind of manage some things. And they gave them certain tasks. They said, like, these are your tasks. And I think there's about 19 of them that the federal government's really supposed to do. But over time, with the advent of world banks and things like that, and linking up with the U.S. banks and the Rothschilds and the Carnegies and all these smart people, and somewhere around Woodrow Wilson comes in, and then they have this little meeting down on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia, and they change the banking system behind everybody's backs, and they pull the wool over our eyes, and we think we've got this treasury that's really working for us, and we have the Fed. Fed isn't even actually anything that was ever constitutional, and we've got this authority put over us that is not through the Constitution. So what people are doing, and I've sought and I've gone through, is to become your own creditor, to become your own sovereign person. And you don't belong to any, whether it's the Bank of England or whether it's the Queen or whether it's the, that we're our chattel. We're not chattel. We are human beings created by a creator to roam this earth and to do good, right? That's the way I look at it. That's not that simple, but it is that simple. Yeah. And that's something that I've been seeking and to free myself. I had to work. I couldn't do that up until the time of May last year because of the uniform that I wore. Because sometimes the government looks at that as it's something scary. Oh, are they terrorists? I don't know. And so we were told you can't do it while in uniform. But as soon as you get out, you can go do whatever you want. Obviously you can't, do felonies and things like that. But what you do is you operate in freedom.
I love it. So you went through the process of freeing yourself from the contractual, which is a false obligation, because it's an obligation that is created out of deception and coercion when we're not even aware of it. So that the whole thing is a fraud. But you went through that process to unbind yourself from that bullshit, huh?
That's completely right. And so I'm 75% through. Actually, I'm not complete because just started, just in the last few months, but we're getting there. And the biggest part is that when you own your own long form birth certificate, they don't own your long form birth certificate anymore. They want your soul. Okay. Now think about this. They want your soul, but it's on a piece of paper with they want your SOUL. It's on a piece of paper with your SOLE on it.
Yeah.
Right. Your little birth certificate. But, and you got to take that back. You got to take it back, all that stuff. It's operate in what is truly given under the Constitution, the original Constitution.
What I've found interesting as of late is the thought around how many letters are there in the alphabet? And most of us will go, well, there's 26. And the reality is that's not true. It's actually 56 or 52. You have your capitalized letters, then you have your lowercase letters. And those each mean something different, especially when it comes to your name in capitalized letters. That's the fictitious you that's on the birth certificate and all your contractual agreements that put you into this system. And if you want to, actually, one of the people that Jim and I are learning from is Greg Paul with The Sovereign's Way, and he's got some phenomenal information about the birth certificate in general, where he's like, when you really get that you're mankind or womankind, owning your birth certificate doesn't really mean anything to you anymore. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's just an interesting perspective from them, because the birth certificate was created at a falsehood anyways. So you're like, it doesn't really matter, because that's that name in capital letters that you just denounce yourself from. And you no longer enter into contract with the people who are trying to utilize that thing to bind you to the taxes and the laws that you're like the legal system that we're supposed to be following. You just remove yourself from all of it and turn your back on it, essentially.
Yeah, it's that simple. And like I said, I'm not an attorney, but I know that there's a difference between admiralty law, statutory law, and common law. And that's where we don't know that because we're not attorneys and work at that level. And a lot of attorneys don't even know that, and lawyers, they don't even know it because they don't operate in that. They just operate in the statutory law that they're dealing with at that time. In the court.
He does some funny things. Greg and his partner, Joe, they talk about the getting dressed up, right? When you look at the judges, why they put these robes on and like the karmic effect of wearing this robe to protect them from all of the nasty things they do in that place, or the police officers, right? The policy enforcers, how they put on, they're playing dress up. And they're like, when you actually become a man and no longer operate in the child perspective, right? When you're a child, you have people that need to take care of you, the government, police, blah, blah, blah. But when you actually step into being a man, you don't play with any of the people playing dress up. And they're like, judges run out of the courtroom when we walk in because they've never faced a man. And Jim, Cal Washington talked about the same type of thing, right? He's like, I walked into that courtroom that one day and that judge turned around and hightailed it out of the room. And I didn't understand why. Well, he went in there as a man, not as a citizen, not as a person, not as any label. He went in there as a man and spoke as a man, and the judge had wanted nothing to do with it.
It's fascinating.
It sure is. And when I read or heard somewhere, legal is the undoing of God's law, I almost fell off my chair. That to me makes infinite sense.
Well, words mean everything to the people in that system, and so we don't. I shake your hand and I say this is what I'm going to do, and I do it. I don't need a piece of paper with my letter in whatever size, capital or lowercase, because that's how I grew up. If I say I'm going to drive across the country because you're my buddy and I'm going to go help you dig a hole, that's what we're doing. We don't need that. But you get into court. And I've seen that because I've testified in federal court in Tampa with Seals versus Lloyd Austin, and my name all in big letters there. This is my affidavit. And that I didn't understand that then because I was still in uniform. Matter of fact, I got squashed on that case because I was still in uniform. It happened to Dr. Long as well, a flight surgeon that was trying to help out as well. So, got to be careful even if you have whistleblower protection, it's not worth the paper it's written on. Because they will.
So wait a minute. Did you say because you were in uniform that affected the outcome of the case?
No, it's not that. It was that I was testifying in a federal court case against the DOD. Okay, and I didn't wear my uniform that day, but I was still in the military.
I see. Yeah.
Right, and so was Dr. Long, but she got called the night before and said, "You will not testify," by her commander. While she's standing next to me, I could hear the phone call. And so were the Liberty Council attorneys in the same room. You'd think that when you when you tamper with a federal witness, you'd think that when you have whistleblower protection, you'd think that when you have a subpoena and you have protection, that they couldn't do anything to her. No, she got on the stand and said, "I'm sorry, Your Honor, I've been ordered not to answer any questions." And Judge Meraday lost his mind. Of course, nothing happened to her command because the DOD doesn't consider themselves in this time of war that we're in. And there's a whole nother story. The DOD is fighting a war. We just don't know it. They're the ones that created this thing.
Okay, so this presents an opportunity to speak to those people who are doing that wickedness, but know it's wrong, and to present to them another option. And that is to do the right thing, to stop obeying the dark side.
Right.
And start coming to the light. And then there's a solution for you. If you're listening to this, or if you know somebody who's in these roles, send them this. You can even take a clip of this show. By the way, everything we do is open source, so anybody can take clips and share it anywhere you want.
Yeah.
And send this to them. We invite you to come to the light. Just like the stormtroopers in the freaking show Star Wars. It was the stormtroopers that came to the light that helped to turn the tide. And you are in a position to make a difference if you're listening. Come to the light. We've got a solution. The solution's easy. We expose the poisons and the poison producers, and we follow God's law, nature's law. We take the poisons out. We grow food instead of lawns. We serve our community with love and joy, and no more force and violence. I'm sorry, I just had to go on that rant because it felt relevant.
And the peaceful noncompliance, right?
That's
just turn our backs on the system they're trying to build. They want to lock us into this financial enslavement using the central bank digital currencies and the digital IDs all attached to it. And, the more we dive into the phone every single day with our heads down, blindfolded, looking at that thing, the more we're missing what nature really is doing for us and providing for us, right? It's got the abundance of everything every one of us needs, yet we're distracted, right? All the time we're distracted. And that distraction and the boxes, the division, that stuff is marching us towards this technocracy that none of us want. But we're going along willfully because we're distracted. So pull your head up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to add to that, Matthew and Jim, because if anybody is watching this and, like me, I want you to understand, I started as a private and I ended up as a lieutenant colonel, right? I've done everything that the Army told me to do, and I did it legally, morally, and ethically. I'd made mistakes just like everybody else. But when you make a mistake, you pivot off of that mistake when you know that you're wrong, right? So I'm going to implore you right now, if you're listening and you know somebody, or you are somebody that is this, do not be a coward. And that's tough to hear, right? Because cowardice in war is punishable by many different ways. Now, this is something that, I knew as a soldier downrange. It couldn't be, but in your heart, that'll be the biggest punishment of all, because eventually one day you're going to answer to somebody, to your maker, to yourself, to your family in shame if you didn't pivot. And just allow that to happen. Some people call it repent, but pivot from that. And because one coward can lose a battle, and one battle can lose a war, and one war can lose a country. That's very important to understand.
And this war is global. This war can lose the world.
The world.
Yes. And I'll just briefly touch on Black Rock is not only the name of the largest parasite in our world, it's the intention of the parasite. And the parasite is run by a computer named Aladdin, who claims to be sentient and self-aware. So that's a pretty interesting thing to stack into this whole thing. So then take your spirit, your soul back, repent or pivot. And then even if you did bad shit and that bad shit's going to come out, I am certain of this. If you own it and you take responsibility for it, then there's something that will release from you. The weight, the pressure will be released from you, and you will start the healing process. Even if you're behind bars, you will be happier behind bars than you are right now in the skin that you're in right now.
Good call.
And we know this is obviously a large, kind of across the earth event that's going on right now. And at first I kind of felt like, it's the UN and WF kind of controlling everything, but I'm seeing now there's a whole lot more fragmentation happening than we really believe. And one of the things that I think is unknown to most people is how, and it was unknown to me until very recently, how we've had our global shipping routes really be safe because of the American protectionism through the Navy, and how that's helped us have goods move around the world really without any issue. Shipping has been secure for many decades now, which has brought us to this level of, I can have anything I want within 2 days with my Amazon Prime membership from anywhere in the world, and here it is at my doorstep. But I think that's about to go away because there's all this fragmentation in the different countries about what they each want as they're trying to fight for their position in this global hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And most people aren't prepared for that, and what that's going to mean if that starts to happen, right? Where all of a sudden pirates, which used to not affect the shipping, right? You never hear of pirates taking down these massive vessels, but all of a sudden that starts to happen, and our global supply chains are smashed and interrupted, and you can't get the things you're used to getting from all these different countries to make your household operate. And now it has to all come from your local community. Now, what are you going to do? And that includes your food. Now, What are you going to do?
Oh, this is perfect segue into this. So Michael Yan is a Greenberry buddy of mine. He's a war correspondent. He's been downrange. He's been in Europe. He's now in the Darien Gap down in Panama, looking at the human osmotic pressure thing. But a few months ago, he was in Germany at BASF, looking at the world's largest fertilizer producer for the breadbasket of Europe, right? And it doesn't just affect them, it affects us. So when you cut the Nord Stream pipeline and that thing got destroyed, and that was their primary means of getting their natural gas. Well, that natural gas wasn't to operate machines. That natural gas was used in what's called a Haber-Bosch chemical reaction and way to make ammonia, NH4, right? And that ammonia is what they use as a primary source for this fertilizer. Mm-hmm. Well, we go back in history, back to 1915 or somewhere in there, the world population increased substantially because of better food or better ways to get it out there. And so when we study famine, and I've studied famine for a long time, and we study man-made famine and global famine based upon climate and climate change. That's another subject. But we look at this Haber-Bosch thing. BASF has shut down. They're moving their operations to China. It's shut down, right? It's so the second and third order effect of that, whether you have ships to move it or not, are can we take this grain out of where the war is right now, the Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe? So you see that a second and third order effect is coming in a possible famine in certain places. You got to be prepared to stand up your own victory garden.
How much time? I've been studying this now for about 16 years, and a lot of people aren't aware. Sri Lanka is already economically failed. Lebanon has failed, and there's many countries that have failed already, and they're in process of this destruction. Right. But how much time do you think we have before it's very obvious to the people of the United States, who are a lot of times just watching their news and their Price is Right? They don't even know.
Right. So the time, I not that I hate to do this. I don't want to scare people, because I want to let you know that we fear that which we do not know. So you got to know so that you can be prepared. Because if you're prepared, then you have less fear. So know that the estimates for me is 3 to 6 months before we start seeing specific, as we see right now with eggs and with certain things on the shelves in bigger cities. Where I live, we have eggs. We got all that stuff. Where I live, I drive a diesel. It's about $4 a gallon. I drive to Florida or I drive to California where it's $7 a gallon. You see that. And then you got to think about, the trains are coming. And we almost had the train system almost shut down recently, right? And that's where we get most of our grains. That's where we get most of our oil movement, even though you see the tankers going down the road. But it's also where we get our diesel exhaust fluid cleaning stuff, right? It's called DEF, Blue DEF, or whatever company you get it from. And that is made from urea. Well, we don't produce a lot of that in this country. It comes from India, who's holding on to theirs right now because they're scared, and from Russia, and they're holding on to theirs because we made them mad. We poked the bear in the eye. And then from This also BASF. Well, what does that matter? What does that matter? Well, I'm going to tell you what it matters. Big semi trucks that bring our food to our stores from those shipping container cars in the East and West Coast. If you don't have DEF, exhaust fluid stuff, it's that simple. Diesel trucks don't run. I use an indicator as how many diesel trucks are on the road, and I see they're still moving kind of. But up in the Northeast and down in the West, they've had some issues where trucks are on the side of the road because they can't get DEF or diesel. So those are indicators. As we see more of that, that'll tell you whether it's 3 months or 6 months.
Wow. So it's happening. It feels like this year the whole thing is going to be very obvious.
I think that and this is from the think tank that I'm parked next to in my trailer here, is right next door to me. These guys are a lot of smart guys that work on these particular things. I do the medical freedom stuff and biowarfare, but they're telling me that 3 to 6 months, if we the people don't do something, because we are the white hats, we have the plan. There's no trust plan.
Right. So then this begs this question. Then what is it that we should do? Let's get to the solutions. Let's wrap this up in the next 15, 20 minutes with what can everybody do to be empowered and to help empower their community and their neighbors?
Okay, rule number 1 is mindset. And everybody's like, why do you go to mindset first every time you do a class on combat, Doc? Well, because the mindset is the base with which everything else can grow. So whether you want to do combat or whether you want to do business, if your mindset is not right, you could end up on the dark side. Or, you're set in that, your mindset's good. But right now, there's this thing called chaos going on, right? And if you, just like Matthew was saying, if you keep looking at your phone every day, you're going to go crazy. It makes chaos. That's what they want. They want chaos. Mm-hmm. The first rule of chaos is to control the controllables. Why do Green Berets, why do they call us masters of chaos? There's a book that's written about it by Lyndon Robinson, The Masters of Chaos. The first thing that we learn is to control the controllable. If I'm jumping out of a plane at 15,000 feet and my parachute malfunctions, I don't just go, well, it looks like it's going to be a fast ride in and a sudden stop. No, I do what's called an emergency procedure, which is over years of training. I go boom, 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 and I cut away, and I pull my chute and I ride it in. That's an emergency procedure. When a pilot runs out of fuel, he doesn't just let go of the yoke and go, well, let's see what's going on here as the planes tumble into the earth at terminal velocity. Same thing. Control the controllables. So find out the thing that you know how to do. Find out your neighbors. Talk to them. This person can do that. They can do this. I can do that. I'm a doctor. Got it. I do yards. Hey, come over here. Let's trade. We start building our communities up, which is what I'm doing in Texas in 5 different communities here. And these are not militias. If you want to do that, join a neighborhood watch program, make it legal, go to your sheriff and say, hey, we're a neighborhood watch program. All right. In Texas, you can wear a gun. Somebody hurts you, you can try to hurt them first. Yeah. But it ain't about that. It's about the networks, because that gives you the peace, which you've controlled that first controllable. Then after that, it's working way up grassroots, obtaining sovereignty at the grassroots level, because we cannot rely on the legislators. Either they're good or bad up there. Most of them are bad. Most of them are really clueless, honestly. I've met some of these people. I briefed on the Hill numerous times. I was there on the National Defense Authorization Act on 3 of them. They're clueless, because you're usually talking to a 30-year-old staffer who's whispering in the ear of your legislator, vote this way. Yet the night before, they were in Georgetown sipping on 6 Mai Tais. So that's how that system works, and that's how it gets screwed up there. There are some good meaning people. It's just that we got to focus locally. So that's where we stay. And then from there, it's people like me and you and you, Matthew, that we've got to be out there linking arms and creating this. I don't like to use the word parallel system, but it is a parallel system, but we're not intentionally doing that. We're just doing what I did in a small town on the Red River, where when this town over here gets squashed by a tornado, this town over here shows up. Yeah. Boom.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. So bringing in some of the strategic things that I'm really excited to collaborate with you on is to creating these seeds of abundance, these abundance factories, because we have supply chain issues. So then the logical reverse of that is become part of the supply chain, right? And there's 4 things that are really important: food, water, energy, and community. And the community part of it is one that I am starting to see that it's really the foundation. Community really should be number 1, because through community and then adding these other things, then it just expands. And it's such a beautiful thing when we start with community and then we grow those other things into the community.
That is beautiful said. Yeah, That is, and here's kind of the funny thing about that. If somebody gives me a mission to go to a foreign country to develop an army, and I've done that. Me and a few guys, 12 guys, we developed an army of 600 people over a period of 3 months. But we had to convince them, first of all, that what we were doing was right. And we had to then identify who was strong in what pieces, intelligence, operations, security. Got it. We identified all that stuff. We trained these guys real quick and we fielded them and they were effective. All right. So that's what we're doing. We are doing that same model, but it's all based on relationship. That's the other thing that we didn't really talk about. Relationship. Know your neighbors. Figure out who can't do something. What old lady lives by herself that can't get, water and she can't go out and haul it and chop wood. Start helping those people out, because when you give like that, when you pay it forward, it's going to come back multiple fold. I promise you.
Oh, that is so true. There's the voluntary exchange of value. Actually, creating value comes back, like you just said, it comes back infinitely. And it reminds me of my favorite concept. You can count the seeds in an apple, but you cannot count the apples in a single seed. And so it's infinite when you start providing value. It's a magical, it's a frequency, it's a vibration that just emanates out and reflects back.
Right.
You think about it from the food production standpoint, it's know your farm, know your farmer. And today everybody should become some sort of a producer in that regard, so you're growing you're your own farmer, producing for yourself, doing whatever you can to do that. And then getting out into your community and inspiring those others to do the same thing, which is ultimately our mission here at Food Forest Abundance, and the beautiful thing that Jim created out of this, which is now being birthed through all kinds of people around the world. But get to know who's growing your food. And if you don't know them, or if you have to read the ingredients label, which contains 55 things, odds are that is not good for you, your health, your survival. So get out there, start buying the one ingredient pieces of food. That's going to be much more beneficial for your long-term health, which will help you navigate these coming trying times from a much better position of strength, right? If your health is gone as we go through these challenges, unfortunately, you may not be one of the ones who makes it. But if you're in good health now, and you focus even through these challenges on staying in good health the best you can, because you know the people around you who are growing food, because you're growing your own food, you're avoiding those poisons, you're going to have a better shot of helping yourself and your family and your community through these challenging times.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Well said.
At scale. Well,
I got another question for you, and this is something I came across. I spoke at a Ontario leaders event for the Freedom Movement about 2 weeks ago, and someone had brought up the MH370 event. Remember that plane that went down? Do you know anything about that large gold heist of 55,000 tons of gold that kind of went missing right around that time, and some of the ideas behind that whole event?
No, but it doesn't surprise me, because we've seen a lot of false flag things like that. That's usually to hide something else. I mean, we can talk about everything from 9/11 to, the gold that went to Iran. I mean, those things, when they're doing look over here, and that's what that is. And I don't have anything. I'll only talk about stuff that I know firsthand. I can't. I wish I did. I would tell you everything. I don't have any constraints now, but no, I don't have anything on that. But it sounds like that type of operation.
Yeah, it's just, if you're ever interested, check out a gentleman's name's Boyd Anderson, and he wrote a book called Under the Radar 537-555. But some of the really interesting things with Boyd, he's Canadian, where I am, and he still holds the record for the fastest 5 goals in hockey history. He scored 5 goals in one. It was like, it was every 37 seconds, basically, when you broke it down. Okay. So he did something from a numerology perspective that was attractive to global elites. So Boyd's career in hockey ended. He went into medical sales, sold this bioenergetic feedback device, ended up selling a whole lot to the Middle East. And while he was in the Middle East, got to connected to some very high up, wealthy people. One of them being from the Eli Lilly pharmaceutical giant family, who connected him to all these other, princes and prime ministers. And anyways, throughout this whole story, he gets into all these things he was told throughout his time there, which at one point he leaves. He's like scared of these people. People have died and he wants out. And then all of a sudden that MH thing goes down. That plane goes down. And he's like, as soon as he heard, he's like, bingo, I know who did all of this. So he's got this all into this fascinating story. And anyways, it just really phenomenal, because I've recently heard about him, and then just chatting with you today just made me wonder if you'd heard anything about that story over the years.
No.
So a related question, are there any things that you do have firsthand knowledge of that are in the mainstream narrative completely false?
Yeah. It wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon. All right. I figured that.
Yeah.
Missile?
No, firsthand knowledge, Benghazi, it was a stand down, and it was directly related to Hillary Clinton, and there was some reasons why they didn't want that ambassador to make it. So yeah, there are things like that this many years, eventually you're going to hear things. Some things I can never talk about, but I'm not trying to be a cool guy. I'm just saying I don't want to get shot.
Yeah. It makes me think of the SEAL team that went down around the whole. Yeah. Oh, I got the chills, man. I got the chills. I am very, very thankful that we are connected, and I would love to invite you to Golf Landing as soon as you can make it, and we'll talk about that. We'll get the details run on that. But I imagine and hallucinate an incredible collaboration between your wisdom and skills and strategic mindset, along with what we're already doing and all of the groups that and I want to share some really good news with everybody listening. There are incredible people coming together to create simultaneous messages that go out to 1 billion plus people at the same time. And the intention is we're going to raise the awareness, the consciousness. We're going to help the world, humanity, rise our vibration. And it's happening, my friends, and it's a beautiful thing. And I really do see there's going to be tough times, and you're laying them out. But we're going to get through those tough times when we do the right things that Dr. Chambers and us will bring to you. And then it's up to us as individuals to step into faith and courage and to lead. Last word, Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, last word. Courage. This is something I talked about before. Cowardice. There's a lot of cowardice going on, but I want to talk about courage, because courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It just means that you can work through it. And so there are some classes that I do on how to actually teach your body to fight through. I had to do that. I got blown up in my truck and came out of my truck, thinking I was going to die that moment. But I went through those things that I was taught by some Vietnam vets, so my instructors back in the day, and it worked, right? So there's things that you can do. And we'll get to that when we get a little further on with this. We'll put these things out. But courage, you got to have courage. And just think about this. It's that simple. If a mother sees something happen to one of her kids, she's going to step up no matter what. And she's not an operator. She don't kick doors for a living. She's got courage in that moment because it's based on love. And that's where we got to operate.
Oh, man. Thank you, brother. That is so beautiful.
I do want to ask, because we didn't touch on it too much, but what are you doing in the medical freedom space?
So I'm identifying, because I got damaged by the shots in the beginning too. I was, told it was a mandate to me as a provider. And I had demyelination, this terrible thing where you take the myelin sheath off your nerves. It's like taking the wiring off, rubber off your wiring. Got short circuited. I've gone through a lot of treatment. I'm doing really good. I can think straight. I'm not having vertigo, all that good stuff. But I found several different things that work, and everybody's got something that works, right? This doc has this doc has that, whatever. Just like battle, there's a main line of effort. And the main line of effort in this thing, in this machine, is your inherent ability to heal itself.
Needs your immediate attention.
Mm-hmm.
Click
Right?
on See Now.
That's
to
what
fix
I'm
these
trying
issues.
to find, is that modality that assists this machine to heal itself. And there is such a thing. God created it. It's fantastic. We go on that main line of effort. But these other modalities, the main one I'm looking at right now is red light therapy. It's waveform stuff that actually works. I got the world's expert sitting like 200 meters from me in this building treating people right now, and we brought him down here to help. But yeah, that's what we're doing now.
Outstanding.
Because we don't just bellyache, right? We don't just complain.
No.
We find solutions.
Yes.
That's what we do, because we look for work. The mantra of Green Berets, look for work.
Yeah, outstanding. And there's so many solutions. That's the great thing. There are lots of solutions. They're actually very, very simple, and we got to bring them to light. As Jim always talks about, we got to shine a light on these solutions and then unify people around them to show them what's possible and just rally the figurative troops, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, man, we'd love to meet that expert, have them on the show if you're got an introduction there. But regardless, outstanding conversation today.
I'll
Thank
get
you
him
so
on.
much
You'll
for
love
joining
this
us.
guy. Is Dan the Messenger, right? He got a message from God after he almost died from a car accident and then COVID, right? The guy's amazing. Former Army medic, great kid, but he's got a heart for people. He loves people. He's an amazing guy. You got to get him on your show. Dan the Messenger.
Dan the
Yes. That's fantastic. Wow. Well, thank you on a Sunday morning for coming, and then we'll chat here right away. I'll give you a call, and we'll figure out some next details for collaborating more on multiple levels. And our intention is to change the world.
That's it.
Because why not? We
Yeah,
can
why
do
not?
this.
What else are we doing?
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you, my friend.
Well, to wrap this up, thanks to everyone for joining us today live. What an outstanding conversation with Dr. Pete Chambers, retired Lieutenant Colonel from the United States Military. Dr. Pete, so great to have you on here today. It was a pleasure to meet you and really an honor. And thank you for your service too.
Hey,
your
you're
time.
worth it. You're worth it.
Completely, we're humbled by that and appreciate it. And now, in this new position as a civilian, what you're doing as well, that fight has never left you and we need it. So thank you for doing what you're doing. Big high five and a hug, man.
Roger. Take it easy, brother.
Thanks, everybody. Beautiful day.
To wrap up, we'll just play a quick ad here, Jim, and
Okay.
you guys can head out if you'd like.
All right. I'll give you a
Hey, Jim Gale Show listeners, again, thank you for tuning in. We love having you here. We're so honored. And, I want to give you a little bit of exciting news. We've decided to offer complimentary food forest strategy sessions with a certified permaculture designer. These are 30-minute sessions where you get to sit down with someone who can really help you with a strategy for your own property. It's a great chance for you to ask some questions and learn and just really to dig into what's possible. This is 30 minutes with someone who's certified, knows all about permaculture and what's possible using this incredible science and working with nature. So head over to foodforestabundance.com and schedule your 30-minute food forest strategy session today. Again, that's foodforestabundance.com. And remember, get yourself registered for that 30-minute strategy session. And for doing so, we're going to give you a $100 coupon as well. So get over there, have some fun, learn about what's possible for you and your own property, and let's get growing some food. Thanks again for tuning in to the Jim Gale Show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. We look forward to seeing you again in a few days. Stay tuned. We have lots of incredible guests coming up. Have an amazing Sunday.